How big?
Nope, we just started streaming.
All right, it streams up.
Huge sound recording studio.
Why don't we?
They're all big units.
What do they manage to do here? Is it concert recording?
Just regular
Insane.
recording. Hey, welcome everybody. 2:02 on Friday. It must be Burnie's Applebox a couple minutes late. Here we are. Hey, fantastic show today. I've got a very dear friend, Jeff Granbery here, and we're talking about a very interesting subject, something that doesn't get talked about a lot in our industry because most people on either side of this fence don't know what the other one does. And that's the difference between videography, being a DP, and being a still photographer. And I've got the guy that does it both, and he's been a dear friend for over 25 years. So we're going to dig deep into this subject. I want you to ask questions. I want you to please share the show. That's awesome. And before we go to Jeff, I'm going to go to my crack intern, Tyler Skillings, who is an up-and-coming DP, and he did a little behind the scenes for this last shoot that he did. He'll tell us about it, and we're going to take a look at that. How you doing, Tyler?
I'm doing great. Yeah, so the piece we're showing today is behind the scenes from our last music video called Ozymandias, and In it, we're going to kind of talk about the struggles and the joys of making a video in the ultra low budget film world.
Everybody should do the ultra. I think everybody has done the ultra low budget starting out film world, right? What was your budget on this?
In this one, we were probably just a couple $1,000s. So all the crew was working for free, and we were really pretty low on this one.
Okay, and this is your behind the scenes. You put this together for us?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, let's take a look at it.
We're in the other room in the studio now. I'm Tyler Skillings. I'm the director of photography on this project, and this is Rachel Pounders. So maybe to start, you can tell us just a little bit about what the project is and what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, so this project is a music video for an original song written by myself and a friend of mine. The song is kind of about thinking that you're something that you're not, and then kind of slowly losing your sense of self and realizing like that whole dust to dust kind of thing. So that's really what the music video is focusing on, is kind of those images of, you know, dust to dust, being in a barren wasteland in the desert. So that's where we've been for the last weekend, in the desert.
Yeah, so we definitely had like some crazy stuff happen on this set. We had trucks get stuck in the soft dirt. We had actors bail at the last minute. You know, a lot of times we didn't have any time to make these decisions. And so, you know, in a matter of hours, kind of rethinking scenes, rethinking, you know, who's going to be there. How do you change your mindset in approaching it when you know that things are going to be so fluid?
Right. It's really a lot of working on your toes. And it's just knowing, like, you know, having backup plans on backup plans and being ready and prepared in case one thing falls through and you have eventualities that you're ready for.
And I think, you know, for camera, like, that looked like we just had, you know, 1.2s and very small generators, even though we were outside and doing, you know, some pretty large outdoor setups. What did that look like from a creative standpoint? Like, you know, we didn't have to do anything crazy to completely, like, reimagine a scene, but things kind of did change as we went along.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you did to kind of prepare that, or was that kind of just a, you know, move it on the fly?
On such a small budget, you don't really have the luxury of being so picky. You kind of have to just roll with the punches as they come.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've learned a lot more going forward is, you know, you want to get the best people that you can and really just let them do their job.
Exactly.
You know, when it comes to your gaffer, your best boy, or even, you know, we had a camera operator on this project. We were lucky enough to have one.
Yes.
We don't always.
Yes.
But, you know, trusting their instincts on some things.
Yeah.
I think it's easy, especially when things are so hectic, to keep it all really close to the chest, right? You kind of want to just be like, okay, well, we're just going to do it my way. And, you know, like, I think you want that team to know, you want to know that you've got that team around you, so that way you're not just rolling through this alone, because when stuff kind of hits the fan, you can't do it alone anymore.
Exactly.
Right? And so that's when you really kind of lean in, and everybody's got to pitch in together to kind of come up with those ideas.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing was, on this set, like, I was super lucky because I've worked with you and I've worked with, like, Gino and Rachel and stuff before, so I really, like, knew the styles of all of you guys, and I trusted you.
I think that's so important too. Like, this is the first time that Rachel and I have actually worked together as director and DP. But we kind of first started working together over the summer when I DP'd a feature and you did sound on that for a number of weeks. So you never really know where those connections are going to come from, kind of where you're going to get your next work from. It's always kind of something different, especially in the low budget world. You know, people tend to jump around positions a lot more.
Yes, they do.
And so you may be directing your passion project one week and PAing or doing sound the next, you know, and it's kind of always jumping around.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up, but before we go, if somebody out there is getting ready to make an independent, ultra low budget music video, what are 3 tips that we can give to them for getting ready to go out and do that?
Right. Well, first, I would definitely say live within your means. Know your budget, know the people you're working with, and just live within that. Don't try to shoot too high, because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and set yourself up for failure. So just be really in touch, and even aim to be under budget, so that when you have that extra money left over, maybe you can splurge and get a little something extra.
Sure.
You know, that's my first tip. My second tip to somebody would be adaptable with your actors. But I know a lot of times this is stuff that they're doing for their reel or things along those lines. And
Sure.
real life happens for them. Things come up. Maybe they have another job and they can't come. And it's just being adaptable, knowing actors might drop out, and again, just really being adaptable. I think the third tip I would give to somebody would be, don't be afraid to wear multiple hats on set. It's a small budget. You're most likely not going to have a huge crew. So don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Jump in there, you know, move that C-stand if there's only 2 grips and we're trying to get this shot off real fast. Don't be afraid to just be like, okay, you want this right here, I'm going to move it. And just being really, again, I think it all just really could boil down into the one word, adaptable.
Absolutely.
And really just being ready to do what needs to be done to get this production done. Those are my 3 tips.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing
Yeah.
a couple tips with us for somebody about to make
For
a
sure.
very low budget music video.
For sure, for
All
sure.
right, great.
Yeah, and I hope you guys have a chance to check it out and enjoy it.
All right, that was awesome, Tyler. Good job, buddy. That was great. You know, what is about behind the scenes? It all looks higher budget, doesn't it? It looks like the budget's a lot bigger if you're doing it behind the scenes. You know, that was great. Thank you. So how long did you spend out there? What kind of time did you do?
So we did 2 days out in the desert and then 1 day back in the studio.
Okay. And how much did you shoot? How many hours? Do you know?
You know, we had 2 12-hour days and then I think a 10-hour day to wrap up
Okay.
at the studio.
Only 12?
Okay.
Easy.
So yeah, we were out in the desert and we ended up camping out there overnight.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's great. And what is the story about?
Yeah, so it's about a businessman who is getting a photo shoot taken of him, and he falls through the floor of the photo studio and ends up in the desert until he finds the recreated photo studio in the desert, but he's been replaced by a different businessman.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like an abstract piece, right? But yeah.
I'm dizzy already. That's great, buddy. Good job. Glad you were out there
Thank you.
doing it. That's the most important thing. You're getting your feet wet. You're out there getting hands-on and doing it. And as my very good friend Jeff Granbery will tell you, speaking of mentorships and all that, that is the only way to learn. And Jeff, just give me a minute because I want to do you right here. I want to do you right. I met Jeff, like I say with almost all my guests now. I met him 25 years ago, and we were both PAs on the same set.
Yep.
And Jeff was one of those guys that's obviously the smartest guy on set, even though he's probably making the least amount of money. And he knew his stuff. He was always a great guy, always had answers. Whenever I would ask something, whenever I wanted to know something, I would go to you so often to find out, and you always had a good answer for me.
Thanks.
So it was very, it's always been a great pleasure.
We learned a lot of stuff during those times.
We learned a lot of stuff.
A lot of what not to do, and a lot of fun.
Mostly what not to do. Thankfully, by watching other people do it. That was what I always considered the greatest blessing.
Yeah, very
is
true.
like you could see the people that made the mistakes. You go, okay, don't want to do that again.
Not good to drive the big heavy truck into the sand.
No.
Because it stays there.
When you only have 4 people to get it out. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. But we did so much together, and of course we went our own ways as time goes on. You find your own path. Jeff, you did something that I think, and I understand why, and I want to get into that for the audience, and I want them to understand too. But you're one of the very few unique individuals who went 2 ways at that Y in the road. You went still and you went video.
I go both ways.
And you go both ways. You go both
yeah.
ways. In our world, you go both ways. But I find it so interesting, and just sitting here talking to you, because I always kind of think I know, you know what I mean, what the differences are. I mean, I know it from my own sense. But sitting here and talking to you, there's such diverse differences that I think that it's going to fill up our hour today talking about those things. But just first, give me a brief scenario. How did you come to be in both worlds?
Well, I actually started early on. I had a job when I was really young as a video camera operator for a school district. And then shortly after that, I moved in, and basically I had some great teachers through high school.
Okay, how old were you when you were at the school?
I was in 6th grade.
Sixth grade.
I made
Okay.
$3.25 an
Okay.
hour
Okay.
once a month.
Well,
and-
I was stealing beer from the tavern. You
Yeah.
were in.
Yeah,
You
I
were
was
actually working.
paying Social Security. And then after that, I met some great teachers in junior high and really fell in love with photography. And I loved the darkroom, and I loved what it did, and I loved how you could make things. I didn't understand the processes that I now understand, but I loved it. And then got into high school, and then I met a photographer early on actually at a fair, and I asked him if he needed an assistant, and he looked at me and said, "Yeah, I do. Matter of fact," and I shoot weddings on the weekend, and many years of that, got my feet wet, and then from there I met another photographer and met another photographer.
So when you were still in school,
Yeah.
in high school,
Yeah.
right? You were in high school
Yep,
then?
I was in high school.
So then you became a photographer's assistant
Yes.
and really took that hands-on mentorship style training.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And then I did that for a long time, and then high school was done. And I mean, when I was in high school, I had a pager and a cell phone, and I got pulled into the administrative area or whatever, the dean's office, and they thought I was a drug dealer. I mean,
Because you were so well connected.
yeah, I mean, this
huh?
is like 89 and 90. I mean, what kid?
I would have thought that
Yeah,
too.
no, but my parents had to come down and say no, he was running his own business, and he was, and it was $1 a minute on the phone. And I would get these jobs from photographers, and then immediately afterwards, I went to Orange Coast College.
Okay.
And then I really got immersed into the whole network of still photography assistants through a shop in town called Perry's Camera. It's not
Okay.
it's not around anymore. But,
Right. And that was here in Orange County.
here in Orange County, and that was the hub. And at the 5 and the 55, if you went out 25 miles and drew a circle, at one time there were 225 photographers in that circle.
Are you
This is
kidding?
pre-digital. That's how many studios were there. Columbine was photo studio, and so the need for us was huge.
Wow.
And all the car design people were here, and all the big manufacturing and engineering and space programs. So there was tons of work.
And that was the old world when the pipeline was narrow.
Yeah.
And it all had to go through that.
Yeah.
So you had to have good product on this side to get it through there.
We had 5 labs in town, and we have maybe 1 left. You know?
I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, it was a different time, and the assistants were an amazing group of people that all stuck together, and then somebody would get picked up on a bigger gig and need to direct, just like we do now in the film
Sure.
industry. Hey, come with me, and then from there I met, and then towards the end of my assisting time, which I assisted for 8 years, I was working with Annie Leibovitz and Herb Ritz, Peggy
Wow.
Digg, and then Jeff Zwart, who my studio is across from his now.
Okay.
And Jeff Zwart is very famous and one of the original founders of Radical Media, and he
Oh,
does
wow.
major stuff.
Wow.
And it's kind of nice to be across the street from
No
him.
kidding.
And
you used to work for him, right?
in the day, yeah. And there's a whole lot of names out there. Some of them are still around, some are not. And then I had a couple of guys like this guy Chester Maharaj, who took a real liking to me, and then John Connell, and these guys would nurture me. And that nurturing, that information was better than any art school you could ever go to. And the information that I received from these guys was amazing. And I worked with German car photographers, and I worked with crazy stuff. We were on an Alaskan iceberg once. And so that was a really great period of time, and we were all over the
And
place.
what was your age range around that? What were you?
So that would have been in my early 20s.
Okay.
And I'm 47 now.
Yeah, so you were living the life.
It was
as far
pre-
as you were
yeah.
concerned, you were living the life.
I mean, I'd get on a plane and I'd go to the Olympics, or I'd go on a plane and I'd go to, to Alaska, or I'd go to this state or this country, and we did a lot of fashion stuff, and it was.
I remember you went to Norway.
Yeah, I was in
right?
Norway
Yeah.
for about a month.
Okay.
For National Geographic,
Yeah.
and it was just amazing, and that was pre-mortgage and all of that
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, that's when
but-
living was good.
Yeah, I mean, you just basically had a rent and some beer money, and.
And what kind of money was being paid then to a photography
Well, when
assistant?
I first started, a big day was $75
Okay.
for 10.
Okay.
And if you got 12, it was $75. But that's the thing, because we love what we do. But that's how the still side of things worked.
Right.
And we would get overtime after 12,
Oh boy.
and which is different than film.
Yeah.
And then, but you would have 2 days on the still side getting ready that were 5 hours. So it kind of equaled itself out.
Okay.
Towards the end of when I left, I was in the 375 category, 400.
Right.
And then those responsibility for those shoots were much, much higher. We were much more of a line producer, gaffer producer at that time.
Okay.
And when we were working with Annie and Herb and some of those guys, and the responsibilities on the still side, there'd be 3 or 4 or 5 of us max. Usually it's just 2.
Yeah.
But we're doing 10 jobs. But
Okay.
we would lead up to a big shoot by 3 or 4 days. So we'd have to go shopping.
So you would have prep. You would have all that, and
Yeah.
then it's so different in ours because we have departments in the
Right.
in the film and video that take care of those things.
All one.
This is the #1 assistant.
Yep.
That's who the photographer talks to, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And then that #1 assistant is assigning the work
Yep.
to the rest of the staff,
And
if there is a staff.
Yeah, it's typically where you have a gaffer grip and all those different
Sure.
departments, you have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and typically it's 1 and 2. And photographer only talks to 1, typically doesn't talk to 2, and if 2 is talked to, it's typically go get lunch.
Yeah.
And one has 1 employee,
Yeah.
which is 2,
Yeah.
and those 2 have to work it out. And if they don't get along, then
That's a
one has to
problem.
go.
Yeah.
But it makes for a very, very tight unit, and that's the difference between still and photo in the studio, is that your main goal is to protect your photographer from failure. It's just like we do it on a film set, but it's much more isolated and smaller groups. And there's a lot more psychology involved in watching the photographer and how is he and does he need anything. I used to work with a guy who was a chronic smoker. I'd always have a little cigarette ready for him, and he'd look
Really?
down. And that's what you wanted to do. A good assistant would always make sure that his boy was taken care of.
Yeah.
Always. It's
I like that.
It's like when somebody brings
Yeah.
you a cup of coffee and you don't ask for it, you're like, okay, that's pretty cool.
That's good.
Yeah.
Somebody empties the garbage, and you haven't told them to empty the garbage,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, same thing.
And we would start to one-ups. If the second did something, the one would do, and then by the next thing you know,
You'd
it's
have a
like-
lighter right there, right?
Exactly, or like, we'd have something special for this, or a special dessert would be brought in. I mean, we really tried to make it fun. They were hard days, they were long.
Yeah.
And in still photography, if we're shooting a car, we may only get 4 shots or 7 shots in a day, depending upon what we're doing. If it's a studio thing where we're shooting repeated product, we might do 30. But we try now again, that was when I was assisting, and budgets were a little different.
Yeah.
We still try to focus in on high quality, and we're working on a single frame versus hundreds of frames.
Yes.
And
yes.
the motif is different on how
And
we
things
approach.
have changed. We'll get into that a little bit,
Yeah.
but things have changed. Also, you did mention something when we were talking about, of course, just like DPs or something like that, each individual photographer has their own strengths and weaknesses.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So you're coming in there and you're probably, I'm assuming now, trying to help service that photographer's weaknesses.
Yes,
In the
yeah,
fact that
absolutely.
you're trying to bridge that for them.
Yeah, and the photographer would typically pick his assistants based on his own weaknesses.
Okay.
When I worked with Annie had her first and second that she always traveled with, and they were out in New York, and they took care of Annie's direct needs, and so we would fill the voids locally. One guy knew all the labs, or one guy had a better lighting handle, or
Right.
one guy was better at gripping or electric or something like that. When we were doing a lot of the car stuff, you'd have a one assistant that was really, really strong in camera, and you would have another assistant very, very strong in lighting.
Mm-hmm.
And lighting, as you know, in photography is different than it is. The devices are different, and because we use a lot of strobe,
Right.
unless we're using tungsten.
Right.
And we use a lot of reflected
Which are
lights.
hot lights. in
Yes.
the
And
the
we used to,
parlance.
yeah, and I mean, in the car stuff, we would have 10Ks and 20Ks on the floor, and we'd.
Yeah, wow.
And again, since we're shooting we can shoot a longer exposure, so we're not shooting 1/24th of a second or 1/60th of a second or 1/48th or whatever. We could shoot 30th of a second or
Yeah.
15th or a minute or 2 or 3. So we could burn in or paint as we would go.
Wow.
We could do a 20K exposure for 1 minute and then close the shutter. We'd use a 4x5 camera, 8x10, typically 4x5. 8x10 was starting to leave. And then we would turn on another set of lights and we would burn that in for 30 seconds. And we'd close the shutter and then do the overall fill at 15 seconds.
And let me ask you this. Was this on the same piece of film?
So on the same sheet of film.
On the same frame?
Yeah.
Wow.
And you never really knew if you got it right. And the only way that we knew if we got it right is we would do a Polaroid. Yeah, an $8 Polaroid black. Now, if you were cheaping out, it was black and white because they were 6. And,
Okay.
and if you were really going for it, you'd go color, and that would be about 8. So you'd shove that Polaroid in, and you'd pull it out, and you'd hope it wouldn't go past the thing, and then you'd put the Polaroid in, and you'd do your test exposure. You pull it back, you throw the thing, pull the chemistry, and wait your 60 seconds, open it up, and bring it out, and sure enough, that's the...
And that Polaroid was close enough to what you would
You
get,
bet.
right?
And what's really interesting is that the photographers that I was working with at the time, and this is what I took a lot of notes from, they knew exactly what the light was going to do.
Yeah.
They knew that the tires needed more time, and that the rims that were silver needed less, and the overall body needed this, or this product shot needed this. And I always thought that that was the magic in the box. And,
Yeah.
and to this day still, and I mean, guys, when they talk about slow light, like we're on set,
Right.
you can see it now. I can see it now.
Yeah.
And you can go, ooh, I know that's going to need more time. And I know that that's going to need to get picked up over there. So let's bring that up a little bit. Now, we use, in video, we use waveform monitors, and we see
Right.
stuff. But these guys were doing it all by basic
Well,
experience.
this sounds like me and just how I imagine the old days in film, when you had to do you had to develop the film and do the daily the next day to see if the lighting
Yeah,
worked,
to see,
right?
and then they would hold the set to make sure that they didn't have to redo it, you know? But it was just a different style of
And
shooting.
now this is, I think that we should, just let me state for the timeline, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people may not actually understand that who are watching this too. That was in the old days. That was pre-digital.
That was
Am I correct?
pre-digital, yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
but the philosophies are still the same.
Right,
you
right,
know?
right.
And I think as both film and video, I paint my video sets, and I know now I want that light over here, and I want that, and I can do this, and I'm going to need to bring that in just a little bit before I ever look at a monitor, and
Right.
I'm usually pretty close.
Yeah.
And I can kind of still see negative in my brain. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I worked at a lab, and so I'd process negs, and we used to shoot chrome, and our exposure latitude was a half a stop.
Wow.
So, you know, and you know, we could shoot negative, which was 5 or 6 stops, but chrome was a half a stop to get it right.
Wow.
And we would shoot, and the photographers, like, typically, I mean, you know, by the time you processed, it was $5 a sheet. So, you know, shoot 4 sheets, and then go run to the lab, wait there, go get lunch, come back, go to the lab, go pick it up, throw it up on the light table.
Oh my God.
Run 1 sheet, and then hold the rest, and then bring the sheet back. We would look at it, and we'd say, yeah, that's right, or it's slightly underexposed by a half. We'd call the lab and say, add a little more exposure. We would run the chemistry longer or shorter, and we could do that about a stop, and sure enough, we could gain that in the chemistry in the lab.
Unbelievable. And you did shoots like that.
Oh, constantly, day after day after day. So we had a lot of downtime. We could clean a lot of stuff. Yeah. That was the other thing, is studios were always a presentation piece.
Yeah.
So the studios were always immaculately gorgeous, and they were well stocked, and there was a definite very cool vibe. We had always good music going.
Yeah.
Typically the sun would go down, there'd be some kind of a cocktail coming out somewhere if we had a client around. You know, we'd go get coffees or something.
Because being a photographer in the day, let me
Yeah.
just say, was more of a lifestyle sort of choice, right? I
it's super sexy.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, when your camera is that big,
Yeah.
your 4x5 camera, and you're using this whole thing, and you're looking at it, and when you look down through your ground glass, it is upside down and backwards. You know, so your brain has to process
your brain's
that.
working that.
So
yeah.
everything you're doing is completely messed up. And we were talking earlier, you know, cinematographers use a T-stop, which is a true stop, and photographers use an f-stop. And my thing is, I kind of say that that's kind of a funny stop, because
Yeah.
the way we do things is kind of just a little goofy. It stems back, like the film industry, many, many, many years.
Yeah.
But even though we're digital now, it's a lot faster, but the techniques are still the same.
Right.
And the latitudes actually are a little bit more narrow. The cameras are getting better all the time, depending on what you're using, but you know, we still shoot for that one-stop exposure is really where we want to be.
And two, photography is such more of an older art form than film or video. It's
been around for a couple hundred years.
Film is 100 years old, but I mean, you
Camera
look at pictures of
obscuras.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
You see pictures that are even before that.
Yeah,
you know?
the shutter used to be lens cap off, lens cap
Yes,
on.
yes.
You know, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, that was it on an old Taylor lens, which was a fixed f8.
Wow.
You know,
wow.
But I think that I'm pretty happy that I had the experiences that I had, because
I was going to say you're very fortunate.
Because I learned some stuff, and we hear about this over and over. Things have changed, and yeah, they have, but we adapt as we go along. And if you don't adapt, you probably won't be in the industry
Right.
much, or you'll be stuck in that style.
Oh, if you don't adapt in this industry,
Yeah.
you are dead. If you stand still, you're dead.
I miss the dark room. I miss the black and white dark room. I miss spending time in there. One of my fellow photographer friends, Walter Urey, who's an amazing photographer, still does his own black and white, and I would like to go and hang out with him and see it again, because I miss the dodging and the burning. And when you do that one print, it's kind of it's its own thing. I can't mass produce it. It's one print, and it's
And
done.
that reveal
Yeah.
too. That waiting, that anticipation to see it. I
Well,
know
it develops in front of you.
It's exciting.
It's like it's like a shrinky dink. Put it in and it shrinks, and then you heat it up, and you put and then you hang it up, and it's this chemical process that's 200 years old, and then it's done.
You know what? Too now. That's when you were an assistant.
Correct.
There was a process too that you came from being an assistant
Yes.
to going photographer.
Yeah.
Let's touch on that for just a little bit.
That's called going mainstream or shooting yourself in the head. In the still photography industry, which is different than film and video, is when you leave your cherished studio or in your protected place, most of those photographers don't ever want to see you back.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a rite of passage. That's
Yeah.
how it was with them. And so if you've been with a guy for 4 or 5 years, you know everything about his family and everything, and then one day you're kind of like, well,
Persona non grata.
you're kind of out of here,
Yeah.
And guys fear, and there's a lot of bad history with photographers that have left and gone after people's clients. But
Sure.
a lot of photographers don't want their secrets, their ingredients, going out to somebody else. And when you leave the ranch, you take those with you. Now, I have a whole bunch of buckets of ingredients that I've taken with me, and some of them I use and some of them I don't.
Let me ask you, is that still true? The assistant photographer relationship prior to them going out, now away from that?
I try not to do it in my business because I do both and I try to support both. I use a lot of film guys in my still photography, and I bring some still guys into the film side. And they both have, whoa, this is kind of wild. It's just a little bit different. That all the equipment has different names and stuff, and it's not so. It's a different working.
I'd say it's rougher going from still to film and video.
When you go from still and you go to video, the typical comment is, I can't believe how fast we're working.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
When do we break? What, I mean, are we really doing 10 today? Are we really doing 12? I mean, lunch. We get an hour for lunch. It's like, no, we've got to go. We got to go.
Do you usually do 64 pages a day?
Yeah. I mean, why are we moving so fast? And it's like, the still guys are typically gonna, you're no longer a third or a second. You have a title. You're a grip, and it's like, hey, the demeanor changes, and you start using hand symbols a lot, and the look and. Where you been, and still photography is like, yeah, all right, where you been? All right, cool,
Yeah, right.
Film is like, we got to go. We got 9 clients.
Yeah.
Everybody has a monitor.
Yeah.
So we got to go.
So everybody's looking at your work and all that.
Yeah.
So now you've become a photographer, right? And now you're out there. Tell me about the process of that, number one, getting clients when you're new and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then, two, let's go into how you veered into video.
Sure.
As well.
So I was shooting stills, assisting. I started having my own clients pick me up. And
so people would come to you just because they knew what you did.
They knew what I was doing, or they saw what I was working on. I mean, this is before social media. And I think that the tool that I have always used, and this goes for my career and for buying equipment, is when there's enough tug on you that you either have to get off of one job and go to another, that's usually an indication that you have a client there, or you need to purchase a piece of equipment. Like if I have to keep renting, it's probably time to start to buy.
Yeah.
In my magic book that I'm making, one of the chapters one of these days will be, you better have a client for that thing. So don't go buy a bunch of equipment thinking you're going to get a client, because all you're going to do is have rent. And so that has always been the tug has always been my indication that it's time to go. So I moved on. I set up shop. I bought gear all the time. And then I started having enough clients, enough to where I could make my rent and stuff like that. And then I had a client. Actually, my Kenwood client called me and said, "Hey, we have this thing called the internet is blowing up, and we need to be part of it. Your still photography is on it, but we want to make a video." And I had some friends. I had already started working in the video business as a first AC.
Okay.
My friend Jerry Patton brought me on. I had met him on a still set that was also a film still combo. They would shoot film on one side and stills on the other, and I had met this guy Jerry Patton, and we're still friends now. And he introduced me to a whole film world. I met Craig Barker.
Okay,
and
sure.
from there, I was introduced to the film side, and then I started working as a still photographer and first, second AC. And that's how I got into it. And
Okay,
so I stayed with camera. I never went to grip or something.
Yeah.
And I stayed camera, and then I was working on a still shoot on the Cosby Show.
Okay.
And I was talking to one of the key grips, and I said, how do you get to be the guy on the camera? And the guy said, you're either born into it or you buy your way into it. And I thought, whoa, this is, old school union.
Sure.
And he said, you're never going to be behind a camera in Hollywood ever, kid, because you just don't have it. And I thought, oh my God.
Coming from the key grip.
Right. And I asked him, I said, well, what don't I have? He goes, the last name.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And he just walked away, and I thought, oh man, I'm sticking with still photography. This is crazy. And so off he went. And
And in those days, that was much more true then.
Yeah, it's not the owner-operator now.
It's lesser so now.
Yeah, that's when the cameras came from three places. It came from Auto, Panavision, and Claremont, you know?
Right.
I mean, that's basically where it came from.
Right.
And you would maybe own some glass, but very rarely, but everything was rented.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now we got owner-operators and tons of glass.
It's
a whole different
model.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, different economy, different scale. So you're there, and you're starting, and now you've been a second AC. You're probably, and I'm just imagining now because of the video shoots I know that I met you on and stuff like that. You're probably part of that second AC money is going to you getting stills.
You got it.
Right,
You're robbing Peter and paying Paul at the same time.
That's right, and they know they got the best guy they could possibly hire as a second AC to get that. So from there, tell me how that works. Does your work start going more towards stills, and then?
Yeah, so it shifts as time went on. Like I would lean towards video for a while, and then I would go. It's kind of I have some seasonal businesses
because this is a rarity in our business for anybody to go to two sides like that.
Yeah,
it is a very big rarity.
I think I just started. I think I just saw both, and I stuck with both.
Yeah.
Stills are still my passion. There's something about still photography that is, and I think you see it with your iPhone and everybody wanting to take pictures.
Yeah.
It's, especially when you get bigger glass and longer glass, there's some magic that happens. And I know that we had some pictures that I brought that maybe we could show a few of those.
Yeah, we're going to start going through a few of those.
And, but there's some magic that happens in the glass.
Yeah.
And it's different because your responsibility as a still photographer is you got one frame. And I came from the newspaper industry, so it's like one frame, two frames. That's really all you get.
Yeah.
So your brain works in a different fashion. I got to figure out a way to cement this in a frame, and that really is what drives the photographer mind. Is how do I accomplish multiple story points in one frame? And in the video world, how do I accomplish my points by moving the camera within its space? So you have some different. It's just a different way to do it, and it takes a little bit of time to figure those out.
Yeah, yeah. And what helped you figure that out? What was it? Do you think if you would have gone video first and then tried to proceed to photography?
No.
In that point, that would have been much more difficult, I think.
That would be counterintuitive, yeah.
Okay.
Because I think still photography first and then into video. I have a lot of my still photographer friends who are working or trying to dabble into video, and they find it frustrating because it's difficult and things move and there's audio.
Yeah.
All of a sudden there's this audio thing that you have to have, and people talk and they move, and so there's that whole portion of
I
it.
think it would be the worst thing in the world to try to go from still to video. But as a person, if you would have started in video, I think it'd be much tougher to go to still, frankly. Well, maybe not. Maybe
I don't
in the
know.
process.
It's like, you're stepping up because there's more moving parts in still to video. And you're stepping down from video to still, so it could be more relaxing.
It could be.
But the fundamentals of exposure camera and all that stuff are still the same. It's the camera equipment is totally different. It is totally different on how you shoot. Right now you set up a video camera, you put some good glass on it, get some good lighting, get some good people, throw up a monitor, and pretty much you're going to be okay. You know, as long as you're within scope and what you want, all of it's going to be pretty much okay. Still photography, if you have mixed lighting sources, like let's say we have our soft light and we have a tungsten light, you're going to see that tungsten light because it's a different color. It's going to be much more apparent on a still negative than it would be a video negative.
Sure.
And you get a lot of what we call contamination. You get a lot more reflection just off of a brown table. The product will be brown as well. You'll see that a lot more in a still. Our shutter speeds are way slower. We might shoot product at a 15th or a 60th. If you're shooting tungsten or if you're shooting flash, it might be 125th. So we're working with, and we also work with strobe. And that's a whole nother animal as well.
Animal.
I mean, you're seeing light in 1/8,000th of a second or 4,000ths. So.
Yeah. Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. You progress, you go up, and you are still now, at this point in your career, people are hiring you for both jobs.
Both jobs, yeah.
And they're allowing you to pick your job, and then you fill in the other one. That's amazing
correct.
To me.
So,
and one of your clients is SpaceX,
That's
right?
correct, yeah. SpaceX and Iridium. So we have 9 flights with them. Our 9th is coming up. And I shoot stills. And so I'm a still shooter producer along with my client, Joe. And it's an absolutely amazing relationship that we have with them. It's, you know, this client and I, we want to do something together to make an unbelievable product, and it's by far one of the coolest things I've ever done in my career. I mean, let alone doing it once to see a rocket take off, and you're a mile away, and we actually go get to visit the rocket the day before.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's pretty cool when people come out of the bus. We come and see the rocket at night, and I don't know if we have any pictures of the rocket that we can show.
We can start putting some pictures up and take a look here too.
I call it getting space dusted. The guys come out of, everybody's in a really great mood. They come out of the bus and they're all chatty, and then they're standing in front of the rocket, and then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, they just stop, and the iPhone comes out. And then it becomes,
there it is. There we go.
That's on the land. That's the whole SpaceX Enterprise.
So then it's like you get that it's almost like 2001 or something. You come in and you get just overtaken by that feeling.
I think maybe we can go to the next shot, which is the rocket in its vertical position, which is the next frame, I think. There you go. This is where you go. They kind of bring you out at night, and it's this huge. It's up on a hill. It's freezing cold, and this thing. I mean, you're all of maybe 100 feet from it, and so you come out and people get stardusted.
Are you seeing the steam and the gases come off it?
That's the next day when they fuel it.
Oh,
but they bring it out there, and so everybody's taking a selfie, and everybody kind of gets quiet for a little bit, and their jaw drops, and then it's selfie time. And then it's me and the rocket, me leaning on the rocket, and then it's just a big party for the next 15 minutes because people realize, oh my God, I'm here.
I'm here.
And we get caught up in it too.
Sure.
And we become part of that whole thing, which is just amazing. And so my client, we shoot both still and video for them.
Yeah.
So in this role, I'm the lead photographer as well as the producer, along with my client Joe. And I help produce portions of the video, and I'll have one of my video guys come out, whether it be Jim Vest or David Winters or something like that.
A guy you trust very much.
Absolutely.
And you go out there, you know they're going to get the shots. And then with your client, let me just cut through this a little bit. You've got, I mean, there's the one I think this is taking off. That's a still, obviously.
Yeah, that's at like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. And so with your client, you have a certain set of things that you want to get, and then how do you interpret that? In other words, I mean, for me, I look at it and you go, okay, the rocket's going to go. You know what I mean? You get that.
So, but our job is to document not just the rocket. If I was just photographing the rocket, that would be way easy.
Yeah.
But we're here to document all the people. These things are very political. There's a lot of people that are involved into it, so we need to cover them. And the people that we need to get, as well as so the rocket takes 2.5 minutes to leave the orbit. So when it takes off, we have about 15-30 seconds. So I shoot the rocket for 15-30 seconds. I shoot with 3 cameras, and then after that, I run around in the corner and I start shooting people. Yeah. Meanwhile, Jim is following the rocket and getting ready to go and shoot people. And when the rocket gets to about mid-height, we come off the sticks and we start going handheld and start shooting people. And that gives us about 1.5 minutes to document people going, oh my gosh, wow, iPhone
So that's the people looking, the people that are observing.
Because we need that for B-roll for their package.
Gotcha.
And we can also use some of the shot footage that we get from SpaceX, from the actual rocket itself. But we have about 2.5 minutes to get everything and everyone. And there's 2 of us. And this is kind of the process. So this is a lot of what we're doing now is where we have 2 or 3 people, and we cover it, and we just have a great vibe. And the first couple are nerve-wracking because you just don't know what it's going to do.
Well, you don't know what you're doing.
No,
yeah,
and it's 5 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
and it's like 20 degrees outside, and you've never, it's pitch dark, and then when the rocket goes, the whole valley's lit up, and you're going, oh my God, what's my exposure? You know, and so basically you brought in a 400 million K,
Yeah.
and then you're going, and, you know, you're all of a sudden you're, so you're, it's a million pounds of thrust.
That's wild. So do you do any documentation like are you up there the day before doing
for this type of,
and
for
stuff?
not this one, it's kind of learn as you go. That's where I think a lot of the experience comes in, because I try to do research when I can. Like, we're shooting cars tomorrow, and I know what we're doing, but I know what the weather's going to be like. So I got to kind of, and based on what their shot list is for tomorrow, I know I got to do a little bit of prep today to get ready for that.
Yeah.
Things that move kind of have a certain set of rules. Like certain shutter speeds work really good with it. Certain lenses work good. Like if we're shooting auto tomorrow, so we want the car to be at least 100 millimeter. We don't want the car to start to stretch or look odd.
Sure.
So there is a little bit of prep like that that goes on along with it.
Okay.
And then tomorrow I have another one of my guys who will be shooting with me.
But a lot of this is sort of, I don't want to say just intuitive, but you know before you walk in when somebody says something. You've done these jobs before.
Yeah.
You know the areas you're going to be looking at.
And as a photographer, I think, and I think cinematography too, you kind of become a human barometer. So it's like, where's my sun? What's my sun cover like? Am I going to break during the day? What do I need to do? Just like when you're out shooting film, it's like, you know, do we need to soak the car? Well, that cloud cover is going to come, and we're going to shoot originally under cloud cover, and then the sun's going to come, and boy, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
And then what you don't want to do is get caught midday and say, well, now we got to build something.
Now we got to build something for it. Yeah. Exactly. You know what I've always been in such admiration for with the still guys, and I think that truly we on our side, we control everything on our side, on the film video side. We are all about control.
Yeah.
Control the location, control the light, control everything, control. Still guys walk in and looks and says, what have I got?
Yeah, very true.
And then can come in and capture that.
Yeah.
I've been so envious of that so many times, and often have thought, you know, God, if this team could just move at a quicker pace and grab what's there.
Right.
But there's so many moving parts. You know what I mean?
That
it's movement, it's people, it's actors, it's lines, it's audio. It's all of those things. But I'm so envious of that the still guy can come in there and grab the moment.
I think we have faster tools.
Yeah.
We can move faster. The camera systems aren't as big as the film stuff, and we don't require as much. We don't need a dolly, and our sticks are much lighter.
Right.
And we can come up here, and we have a lot. We can also create light in our camera by dragging the shutter. So instead of like 1/24th or 1/30th of a second, we can slow the camera down and get out to a half a second.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't have to use a lot of light. Maybe I'll take what's available and I'll just add a little something over here. And that's my John Connell effect I used to work with. He'd just be like, put a little something there, put a little something there, and we'll just drag it out and turn on the fluorescence for a little bit during the exposure, and we got ourselves a shot.
Wow. What magic.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't I just paint it out? I'll just
Yeah.
paint it out. And it's like, oh my God, I can do that.
Yeah.
Now, you can't do that in film and video.
No.
And you can kind of get away with that. And another photographer taught me that whenever you're walking around, you have to put a little box around it. Anytime you see something that looks like a cool shot, put a little box around it. And for, I don't know, 27 years or something, I've been putting little box around things. And I remember thinking I was going to tell you this, and I was driving down and I saw 3 cars all stacked up. And I'm like, ooh, that's a shot right there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're driving down your car and you're like, oh, there's a shot, there's a shot, you know.
Yeah.
And it's your mind is becoming the lens, and
So much.
we call that seeing negative, or we see that seeing the shot. And you see it with DPs, they walk in, they go, well, here's your shot here, and here's your shot here, and then somebody says, well, it's over here, and you go, no, that's not it.
Yeah.
You know, because we have this texture here, we're going to use a long lens here, and we're going to, and that's what I really, really enjoy about it, is taking something that is normal that you would see on an iPhone and turning it into something so dramatic through the tools that I have that I can turn
It just
into something.
creates the magic for you right inside of your
The
brain.
telephoto lens is amazing. What
Yeah.
it can do, and wide angle, and you know, our eye is 50 millimeter. We can perceive telephoto, but we cannot perceive wide angle.
Right.
So that's why when we see panoramic photographs, we go, whoa, that looks so cool.
Yeah.
It's so different than I've ever seen before.
Yeah. You know what? We have that one show, Tony, and I don't know if I introduced Sean and Tony Guys, take a bow. Take a bow right now. I think it was all about Tyler at the first of the show. But Tony, we have that one shot. It's the one that he talked about stacking the welding glass up on. I just want to see if that it was just a little still. You may or may not see it, and it's around that rocket stuff.
I think it's in the SpaceX pile.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the multi-exposure one?
Yes,
yeah, it's a vertical shot.
Yeah.
It's just a.
I want Jeff to explain to us.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it.
Okay.
So now give us the lowdown on this because I found this fascinating when you told me how you got
this is a trick, and this is literally a one-trick pony. I'm shooting with 3 other cameras, and this is the 4th camera set up off to the side.
Okay.
So I have to have it on a remote. Mm-hmm. It's roughly 8 o'clock in the morning, and this style of shooting is called a star shot. And what I want to do is I want to get the rocket from the ground to the top. Okay. Well, how do I do that? Right? It's already daylight.
Yeah.
So I found this thing called the 10 stopper, which is 10 stops of neutral density. But it wasn't enough when you do the math, so I got a second one. So it's 20 stops of neutral density.
Okay.
ISO 100 and an exposure of 3 minutes. Because it's 2 minutes and 15 seconds for the rocket to take off, and I needed 15 seconds on each side.
Wow.
So that's a 3-minute exposure basically in solid daylight. And I shot it in RAW, so I had 17 stops of latitude, and it worked. And I have 1 frame. That's it, 1 frame.
Incredible.
And it worked. And I had the light meter in the camera will not work. You have to do it in math, so you have to do long form.
Okay.
So you do it on. There's a lot of exposure calculations.
Yeah.
And there's actually one specifically designed for the 10 stop, 20 stop, and 30 stoppers. And you're cranking this thing up, and you're like, really, ISO 100 f22 for 3 minutes, and you're like, okay. And then you turn on the camera, and it sits there, and you hope it doesn't move, and you hope it doesn't shake. Wow. And then the shutter closes. And meanwhile, I'm shooting everything else. I have no idea. So I come back and I wheel through the camera, and it fired a few frames afterwards, and they were all white. And I was like, oh man, I blew it. And then I clicked the shutter back, and there it was. It was a little bit underexposed, but I saved it in the RAW.
That is
and
so
that was
awesome.
one of those things where it's like, all right, you can paint in the negative. It's harder to do that in video and film.
That is so awesome. If I could put you on the spot for a minute, give me some scenarios, some different things of what works in photography that would never work in video.
Yeah,
I don't want to be too broad, but go ahead, give us some stuff like that.
One, in still photography, we get less people and a little bit more time.
Okay.
On the most part, depending upon what we're shooting.
So more time, less people.
Yeah. Which puts a higher demand on who you select to make sure that you're getting really great people.
Sure.
And the guys that I work with are absolutely top notch. Our equipment is a little bit different. And to this day, I have a lot of still gear on my film truck.
Okay.
And so I mix and match. Like we're sitting here and I see a lot of big film stands. I use light stands, heavy duty light stands, but they're lighter and I can put 6 in a bag. So I kind of cross pollinate between film and video.
So you're not the film and video snobs that we are. You will go use different equipment.
I will use whatever tool is available. Like you said earlier,
yeah,
photographers are really good at saying, I'll use that. And I used to work with a photographer that wore gray jeans all the time. And I thought, why do you wear gray jeans? And he looked at me and said, how do you not know that that's a gray card? He always had a gray card, and it was his gray pants. It was gray Dockers. I mean, that's how. So I remember being on a still set saying, go out to my car and go get my fill reflector. He called it a fill reflector. It was actually an auto shade.
Okay.
And bring that in because and we did that. We did, and sure enough, we lit the product. We did jewelry shooting with
his
that.
auto shade.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
And it's like, you know what? Bring a little of that in.
So you'd be throwing off set if you
Yeah,
came in
well, you get scrappy when you got to get it done.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, it's like you got a flashlight and a light bulb. Sure, turn the lights off. We'll paint that little thing.
But that's what I really admire about that.
But you got to get the job done.
Yeah.
And a lot of photographers don't carry a film truck like I do and like you do.
Yeah.
It's it's a station wagon or a minivan.
And they've got their gear they've used on every shoot they've had that year.
Yeah, and they got 3 bags. You usually have one little Johnny get out of the spot bag, and then you got a couple of lights and a whole bunch of tape.
Yeah.
And what you can do with the gaffer tape is amazing. You can make balls out of it, and it'll prop up, and you can do an amazing amount of stuff. So I think those are some different similarities. So I have, in my business, I've mixed the two together. So I've kind of have a studio truck and I have all the gear in there. And so I have enough for both. If I need a big light stand, I got it. But usually I'm going to use this. Yeah. It's just kind of a different way to get it done. And we're a little scrappy on the still side.
Yeah. Now, video. What is an advantage in video that you're glad you have and you wished you had in the photo
Right.
side?
So in the video side, typically when we shoot a video, we're done. We hand it off.
Yeah.
Now, for still photography, in my case, I stay with it all the way to the end because I'm responsible for post. So it's not like I hand my hard drive off to an editor and the editor knocks it out and comes back and says, "Do you want to take a look at it?" It's nope. Here's your hard drive. I'm done.
Yeah.
Still photography, I shoot. We shoot in RAW. I come back. I color. I modify. I do all the DI, if you would, and then it goes to me, and then I curate it. I proof it for client. I take it out of RAW form, convert it, and then send it to client in a slightly more compressed form that they can use, and then from there they can then populate it to their design group.
Right.
So we have, on the still side, we have a lot more responsibility for making sure that the negative from creation to delivery is all within our care.
Right.
Because the worst thing that you do is you shoot a raw negative. It gets into somebody that doesn't know how to use Lightroom or Photoshop or any of the tools, and then somebody calls you up and says, "Why is this light gray?" And you're like, "Well, that's a raw image." And then it's just better off to finish it.
I know you well enough to know that you're always thinking about how the client's going to be perceiving what you send them the first time.
That's why we finish everything.
Yes.
And that's even what we do in the film side too, is that when it comes to color, if it is going to post, we will have a conversation with post prior to going out.
Right.
Because I can't tell you how many times I say, okay, we're going to go out and we're going to shoot, we're going to shoot BT 709 or 2020, 2021, and you talk to the guy on the other end who's actually doing the editing, and he says, no, I need this all in RAW, or I need this in Canon, RAW or Arri RAW or whatever we're shooting in. And then you're like, oh, good thing I didn't bake in color because he's matching something else.
Right.
Right. And that's another thing. Still photography is usually a start and stop project. It's like one type of environment. Video is many times an additive sequence where we're doing something that maybe is one element of multiple pieces.
Right.
And so we have to kind of mix and match, or we take a look at what somebody did and we match a lot of that.
Yes.
Still photography, you don't match a lot. It's like the photographer's opinion. It's the photographer's look. They may say we want something in this style, but it's up to us on how we want to make it look.
It's funny. You're not supposed to like this, I don't think, but I have always enjoyed trying to match something in video. You know what I mean? Where you can fudge a little bit and it's a quick shot, but you need that insert. You know what I mean? But it's got to fit inside that bigger shot that you do. For some reason, I've always found that fun and challenging.
I've worked with enough very high-end photographers where that doesn't go over very well.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And I remember, I'm not going to name their name, but I remember a client saying, "I want it to look just like that." And the photographer looked at that and they said, "Well, you should get on the phone and go hire that guy because this guy just quit." I thought, okay, you know what? That is.
And see, still guys can get away with that. You know what I mean? I mean, if you get up to a certain level, but that is a total still guy response.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not me.
Yeah.
You're hiring me.
That's very true. And you get that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think when you get to the very top end of the DPs, people will say, that's a brand. You want my look, you got to hire me.
You got to hire me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm a lot more flexible than that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because I like working.
No, exactly. As do we all. Who do you admire most? Give me some still people and some DPs or whatever who you admire. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering or even anybody knows.
No, I mean the guys that a lot of my mentors I really, really admire because they did it before I did it and they slugged it out. I had a great opportunity to work with Walter Urey here locally, who is, I think, the best portrait photographer on the planet. The guy has just a way of photographing things I think is just amazing. His technique is straightforward, non-complicated, but extremely technical, and you would never know that it's technical. It's just gorgeous. And the way that he works with a person is and I could talk stories about him for years. Like, I've worked with him for a long time. I worked with a guy by the name of John Connell. He wouldn't let me wear a watch. I had to tell time by shadow.
Oh my God!
So that was, I mean,
the human sundial.
Yeah, keep in mind that as an assistant, you were somewhat tortured.
Yeah,
and you were
right.
And so those were some of the guys. Jeff Zwart, I really, really admire because he was a still photographer. He picked one client, Porsche primarily, and now he primarily just shoots for Porsche. And he really, I mean, all he does is cars.
Yeah.
And I wish I kind of said in my mind, I just did cars or I just did this. And rather
so
than
you
mixing
think
and
that
matching.
could have been an advantage for you as a still guy, is to just pick one subject and stick
Yeah,
with it? That's interesting.
It definitely hones in what you do.
Yeah.
If you said I just did medical, then I would just be doing medical every day.
Right.
But I like the variation, and I think maybe that comes from shooting stills and video. I don't like every day being the same thing.
Yeah.
Who else do I admire? There's so many people that I've admired throughout my career that I can't, of course, remember all their names. When it comes time to the DPs out there, is there one particular DP that I really gravitated? Woody Omens was amazing. I had a chance to really meet with him and work with him a little bit. I had a chance to work with a guy by the name of Douglas Curtin, and I don't know if I have his last name right. And I used to work up at the ASC, at the clubhouse as a volunteer.
Okay.
And he invented moving titles.
Oh my gosh.
So when I met him, he was in his 80s.
Wow.
And I would sit and drink scotch with this guy, and he would talk about how they would do things in the 20s and 30s and 40s.
Oh my God, what a treat.
One shot a day.
One shot a day?
6 to 8 hours.
Wow.
One shot a day. It was a scene. And everything went into the scene. And when you were done, you'd come back tomorrow and do it again.
Unbelievable.
Not like it is now.
No, not a bit. Not a bit. You know, that what a great opportunity for you to be able to start when you did, find out it was although I think young people today have many more actual advantages than we did, mostly by getting hands-on. Look, what does it take to take a picture now? I was with a little girl, not even 2 years old. She took a picture. Well, she clicked the button. She took a picture.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't know what she was doing. But that young, you can look at something and want to take a picture.
Absolutely. You know, I think the people that I admire most are the people that are still in the industry and who have survived and adapted.
Yes.
I'm proud of all the guys that we hang out with, new and old. This business puts a toll on you, and it's taken me 20 some odd years to kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
And now I've gotten to a point where I'm pretty balanced in what I want to do and how I want to do it. And I'm pretty balanced with my clients because we all together want to make something great and share in its success.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny. I mean, we're out of time now. We're down to 1 minute. But that was something, and I'll have to have you back because that's something that I actually wanted to talk to you about, because I know you've got wife, young child, that you're remodeling your house. Last time I was over there. And I too married now, that I wasn't in many of the years I was in the industry and stuff, like, and it takes a toll on the family.
So shoot a lot while you're single.
Yes.
Shoot a lot when you're single.
You'll notice he said don't get married.
Don't get married, but not. Take your time.
Take your time.
And shoot a billion frames before you.
And if your wife can be an assistant, that's awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
But
I highly recommend that the wife and the husband do not have the same career path.
Yes.
Because you will have a very cold winters.
I even suggest not even the same, major language. You know what I mean? Your native tongue should be different.
Yeah.
My wife is Turkish, so I find the perspective quite refreshing most of the time. Anyway, buddy, thank you so much. And I mean,
really enjoyed it.
There is so much to cover with you because I didn't get it. Remember when we were talking, I go, God, you got to be on the show, Jeff. We were talking business for 20 minutes at that point.
Yeah.
And
let's do it again.
Let's do it again.
Maybe if some people have some comments of things that they would like to maybe learn or know about, they can send it in.
Absolutely.
And we'll cover it.
Please. We'll have Jeff back, and we'll have we'll cover business practice, because I know one of the things you and I have talked about so much is running a business, and a business of our size, which is not big enough to hire a bunch of people to fix your problems.
Right.
It's about being there and making sure you get it right every time.
And the business side on still photography and video is very, very different.
We got to talk about that. We got to talk about that.
Hey,
thank you, brother.
All right, appreciate it.
And we will see you guys back here. Oh, let me just give you a little programming note. The next 2 weeks will be encore presentations of Burnie's Applebox. We're gonna show you reruns, essentially, and then we'll be back at the first Friday in January with a brand new fresh show. So we'll see you then. Enjoy. Happy holidays to everybody, and thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Cut. That's a wrap.